British royals have posed for a new formal photograph. There, she's the only splash of color in this picture, but take a close look at her tiara.
Queen Camilla insisted that Princess Catherine hand over her royal tiara.
Middleton is making her tiara debut as the Princess of Wales.
The request shocked everyone, but no one was more furious than Prince William.
Stuff to do with family overwhelms me quite a bit. You know, worry or stress around family side of things, that does overwhelm me quite a bit.
Okay guys, you need to see this, because when Queen Camilla demanded that Princess Catherine hand over her royal tiara, nobody saw it coming. Middleton is making her tiara debut as the Princess of Wales. And this request? It stunned absolutely everyone. But no one, and I mean no one, was more furious than Prince William. Listen to what he said. Stuff to do with family overwhelms me quite a bit. You know, worry or stress around family side of things, that does overwhelm me quite a bit. And what he did next? My friends, it will absolutely shock you, because this isn't just about a piece of jewelry. This is about power, manipulation, and a royal showdown that nearly tore the monarchy apart. Picture this. The afternoon sun is pouring golden light through the windows of the blue drawing room. Princess Catherine is standing there, carefully arranging white roses in a crystal vase. It's her ritual, you know? Something simple, something that's just hers. And after the week she'd had, demanding every single ounce of her composure and strength, she needed this moment of peace. But here's the thing. William was away on a 3-day tour. The palace felt completely hollow, empty. The silence was pressing in on her like another weight she had to carry. And that silence? It was about to be shattered by the sharp click of Queen Camilla's shoes on the marble floor. Queen Camilla walked in with that smile. You know the one. Polite, practiced, perfect. But Catherine? She instantly sensed something was off. There was an ulterior motive hiding behind that smile. After years in the palace, she'd learned to recognize the signs. Those moments wrapped up in courtesy, but sharpened by intent. "Catherine, darling, I trust you don't mind me dropping in," Camilla began, her voice smooth as silk as she glided into an antique armchair by the window. "There is something rather important I need to discuss with you, privately." Catherine set down the roses, turning to face her. "Of course, Queen Camilla. What is it?" And here's where it gets interesting, guys. Camilla's tone shifted. It became firmer, more deliberate. "It concerns the upcoming state dinner for the Japanese delegation. I've been considering the jewels, and your sapphire tiara would be absolutely perfect. The deep blue would harmonize beautifully with my navy gown and send a subtle yet powerful message to our Japanese friends." The words hit Catherine like a physical blow, because the George VI sapphire tiara? This wasn't just any piece of jewelry. This was her wedding gift from the late Queen Elizabeth, a piece bound to her with meaning and memory. The thought of parting with it, even for just one night, felt like she was giving away a piece of herself. Catherine chose her words carefully. "I hadn't realized you intended to wear a tiara. Perhaps your sapphire necklace and earrings might be more appropriate?" But Camilla's smile thinned, got colder. "As queen, I must create the strongest impression before our guests. A tiara conveys the full majesty of the monarchy. Surely you appreciate the importance of presenting a united family front at such an occasion." Those words? They cut deep. United family front? It wasn't a suggestion, my friends. It was a command wrapped in diplomatic language. Catherine found herself torn between her loyalty to the crown and the deeply personal bond she felt to those sapphires. She remembered Queen Elizabeth's words, spoken so softly, like she was passing down a blessing. "These sapphires suit you, my dear. They reflect your beauty and kindness." Now the idea of them sitting on someone else's head, even for one evening, felt like a betrayal of that trust. But standing against a reigning queen? That risked more than just tension. It risked unraveling the fragile balance she'd worked so carefully to maintain. Camilla pressed harder, her voice sweetened but edged with absolute certainty. The late queen would have approved of such symbolism. These jewels belong to the crown, not to one individual. "Catherine, you've always shown such grace in these matters. It would mean a great deal to me, and more importantly, to the crown." There it was. The invocation of the crown, a pressure impossible to push back against without serious consequences. Catherine steadied her voice, though inside she was recoiling. "If it's truly your wish, then the tiara will be at your disposal for the dinner." Camilla's eyes lit up with quiet triumph. "How very thoughtful of you. I knew I could rely on your good sense." She rose elegantly, smoothing her gown, and leaned forward to brush Catherine's cheek with a perfunctory kiss. You've relieved me greatly, my dear. Our guests will be most impressed. The moment that door closed, Catherine sank into the nearest chair. She exhaled a breath she didn't even know she'd been holding. Her composure completely cracked in the solitude of that room. She looked toward the vase of white roses. Once they'd seemed so pure and calming. Now they were stark reminders of how duty had completely smothered sentiment. She reached out, adjusting a single bloom, as if somehow restoring order to the flowers might restore it within herself. Duty had won this round, but deep inside, a quiet vow was forming. The tiara would return to her keeping, and its meaning would not be forgotten. But guys, in the palace, nothing stays secret for long. By evening, whispers were coiling through the corridors like smoke, seeping from the blue drawing room to the kitchens, the offices, the stables. Within hours, every single staff member knew that Queen Camilla had asked for the George VI sapphire tiara, and Princess Catherine had given in. The story took on new colors with every retelling. Some people swore Catherine had resisted until the very last moment. Others claimed she'd surrendered it with grace. But the core truth remained steady as stone. The tiara was leaving her hands. Meanwhile, in her private rooms, Catherine tried to bury herself in correspondence, but her hands kept drifting to the sapphire earrings she was wearing. Their faint glow was a constant reminder of the tiara, lying in its velvet case, waiting to be taken away. She couldn't banish the image of that case sitting empty. Lady Susan entered quietly, carrying a leather folder. "Your Royal Highness," she began softly, "I've reviewed the tiara's insurance documentation. If you wish to reconsider, there may be requirements that could offer you an honorable way forward." Catherine's head snapped up, a flicker of hope crossing her features. "What kind of requirements?" "Security clearance of 48 hours. Lady Susan explained carefully. "Environmental conditions during transport. And most crucial of all, written approval from Prince William for any transfer of personal wedding gifts." For the first time since her reluctant agreement, Catherine felt the crushing weight in her heart ease. Just slightly, but by the following day, that faint hope was completely dashed. Queen Camilla's team moved with ruthless efficiency. Insurance waivers were signed. Security clearances pushed through. Environmental protocols satisfied. Every single obstacle Catherine might have leaned on had been swept aside as though they'd been anticipated long before Camilla ever set foot in that blue drawing room. Her agreement, she realized bitterly, hadn't been a choice at all. It had been the final stamp of approval on a plan that was already in motion. The night of the Japanese state dinner arrived. The state dining room was absolutely glittering beneath 3 massive chandeliers, their crystal drops scattering 1,000 shards of light across the room. The long table gleamed with gold-rimmed china, polished silver, and cutlery fit for emperors. Diplomats, cabinet ministers, and high society figures moved through the grandeur in silken gowns and tailored tuxedos. It was a stage perfectly set to impress. But Catherine? She wasn't there. Officially, her absence was explained away as a scheduling conflict. But the truth, my friends, was far more personal. Catherine could not bring herself to stand in that room and watch the tiara, the late queen's gift, her gift, crowning another woman's head. Instead, she remained in her private sitting room. The glow of the television screen was her only company. Her pulse quickened as the broadcast rolled on. First, the emperor's arrival, then the formal greetings, and finally, the sweeping shots of the reception. She braced herself for what was coming, and then it happened. Queen Camilla stepped into frame, bathed in light beneath those chandeliers. The sapphire tiara was blazing at her brow, its blue stones catching fire with every single camera flash. It was breathtaking, everything Camilla had intended it to be. Commentators immediately praised the choice, calling it magnificent, the perfect pairing with her navy gown. Catherine leaned forward, her breath caught in her throat, and then she heard it. The commentator, with all the certainty of authority, attributed the tiara to the late Queen Mother. The error struck like a physical blow. Not only had her wedding gift been claimed visually, but now, before the eyes of the entire world, its true story was being rewritten. By dawn, Catherine knew every newspaper in Britain and plenty abroad would carry the same mistake, repeating the false attribution until it hardened into public memory. Something sacred had been stolen from her. Not just the tiara itself, but the truth of its meaning. Still, she couldn't look away. On screen, every angle lingered on those sapphires, catching their fire as Camilla turned, smiled, and charmed dignitaries. Photographers clamored for the best shots, ensuring that by morning, Catherine's gift would be immortalized in print as part of Camilla's crown. When the Japanese emperor admired the tiara, Catherine wondered bitterly what story Camilla was spinning. Surely not the real one. Surely not Elizabeth's gift given in trust. Lady Susan entered softly, setting down a tray of tea. "The cameras adored the sapphires," she said gently. Her words meant his comfort. Catherine only nodded, unable to find her voice. On screen, Camilla lifted her glass for the formal toast. The sapphires caught the light with cruel brilliance. To the world, they symbolized majesty. To Catherine, they burned with memory. Elizabeth's hands resting tenderly upon her head, whispering words of blessing. Yes, the tiara would return, but it would never again feel wholly hers. That night, something had been broken inside Catherine. But guys, this would be nothing compared to what Prince William was about to do. Prince William's return from his trip had been delayed by absolutely brutal weather. His helicopter was forced to divert to Yorkshire, turning what should have been a simple journey into an overnight nightmare. By the time he finally reached Kensington Palace, exhaustion was weighing heavily on him. But even through his fatigue, the thought of seeing Catherine after 3 days apart lifted his spirits. He went straight to her study, expecting the warmth of their usual reunion. Instead, he was met with something completely different. He found her seated at her desk, surrounded by papers and correspondence. To anyone else, she might have looked perfectly composed, but William knew better. After 14 years of marriage, he'd learned to read the truth in the small things. The tense grip on her pen, the rigid line of her shoulders, the faint tightness around her eyes. These were Catherine's tells, the signs that she was holding back emotions too heavy to voice. "Darling, I missed you," he murmured, bending to kiss her forehead before settling into the chair beside her. "How was the Japanese state dinner? I caught some coverage, though the connection was terrible." Her pen froze mid-sentence. The silence stretched just a fraction too long. "It went very well from what I understand," she said carefully. "Very diplomatic. Very successful." William frowned. Normally, she recounted such evenings in vivid detail, eager to share her impressions. The neutrality of her reply made his stomach tighten. "You didn't attend? I thought it was in your calendar." "I had other commitments," she answered softly, eyes lowered. Camilla represented the family beautifully. The tiara looked lovely on her. The words hit him like ice water. At first, he struggled to make sense of them. Then the realization landed. His jaw clenched hard. "She wore your tiara," he said slowly, steel creeping into his voice. "The sapphire tiara." Catherine's composure cracked. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, betraying the storm she'd tried so desperately to contain. The sight ignited something fierce in William, an anger that shattered the careful diplomacy that had been drilled into him his entire life. "She asked to borrow it," Catherine whispered. "She insisted it was appropriate for the delegation. I could hardly refuse without seeming uncooperative." The words burned in his chest. He turned away, pacing to the window, his hands clenched into fists. The sapphire tiara wasn't just another heirloom. It was his grandmother's personal wedding gift to Catherine. He remembered her telling him privately that the sapphire symbolized Catherine's steadfast spirit, her constancy in joining the family. To see them paraded as a diplomatic prop felt like a direct insult to her memory. "She asked you to surrender your wedding present," he bit out, his voice shaking with controlled fury, "and then used it to parade in front of foreign dignitaries." "She framed it as duty," Catherine replied, her voice heavy with apology. "She said the late queen would have wanted treasures like that to be worn for state occasions, that the jewels belonged to the crown, not the individual." William turned sharply. "That is manipulation, nothing less." His voice was trembling with barely controlled rage. "Where is it now?" "Still with Camilla's staff," Catherine admitted quietly. They mentioned official portraits before it's returned. That casual extension of the loan twisted the knife even further. To William, this was no longer about jewelry. This was an assault on loyalty, on memory, on the sanctity of a gift that had bound Catherine to his grandmother's trust. The rest of that afternoon, William made discreet inquiries. He called on the quiet network of staff who had served his family loyally for decades. And what he uncovered didn't soothe him. It hardened him. The most unsettling testimony came from Patricia Hartwell, the senior dresser. She met him in private, her voice trembling with a mix of reverence and indignation. "Your Royal Highness, this isn't the first time. Over the past 18 months, there have been requests, personal items belonging to Princess Catherine, each time framed as family duty or diplomatic necessity." William's jaw tightened. "What sort of items?" "Accessories. even clothing, for certain appearances. Mrs. Hartwell hesitated, then added, "Each time the princess complied, but afterward, she seemed diminished. The staff has noticed her distress." William's anger cooled into something sharper. A cold, deliberate calculation. This wasn't one misstep. This was a pattern. A slow erosion of Catherine's autonomy, hidden beneath the guise of solidarity and duty. To him, it looked less like tradition and more like systematic bullying. Later, in a carefully arranged meeting, Sir Edward Peaton confirmed the staff's unease. "Department heads are increasingly concerned about the precedent being set," he confided. "The line between personal gifts and crown property is foundational. If it blurs, it undermines centuries of protocol. Has anyone confronted the Queen directly?" William pressed, his voice edged with quiet fury. Sir Edward's reply was cautious. There had been efforts through proper channels, he admitted, but nothing had shifted the pattern. The household had reached its limit. Their loyalty to Catherine was crystal clear, but their positions left them powerless to defend her. That responsibility now rested squarely on William's shoulders. That evening, he placed a private call to his father, hoping almost against reason that the king might intervene. Instead, the conversation left him more disheartened than ever. Charles dismissed his concerns with weary detachment, insisting Camilla was only fulfilling her role with dignity. "Jewels," Charles remarked, "were meant to be worn, not locked away." William's patience fractured. "That tiara was Granny's wedding gift to Catherine," he argued, his voice tight. "It wasn't meant to be paraded as a stage prop before foreign dignitaries." But Charles brushed him off. "William, you're being dramatic. Family members have always shared jewelry. It's tradition." The call ended unresolved, leaving William with that familiar ache of disappointment his father always seemed to summon. If Charles wouldn't protect Catherine, then he would. Back in their apartments, he found her attempting to read, her gaze drifting from the page. He sat beside her, taking her hands in his. "I spoke with father." Alarm flickered in her eyes. She urged him not to quarrel with his family. "The tiara would be returned," she whispered. "Let it go." But William's grip tightened. This was no longer about a tiara. It was about her dignity, her place, her worth. Granny had given her that gift out of love and trust, a symbol that she belonged. To see it misused was to see that memory trampled. Catherine's composure broke. Tears spilled as he held her close, rage and tenderness mingling in his chest. "Tomorrow," he vowed, "I will confront Camilla myself." The next morning, William demanded a private meeting with Queen Camilla. No aides, no witnesses. He deliberately chose the morning room at Clarence's house, a space so closely tied to Camilla that she couldn't possibly mistake the encounter for a trap. He wanted it plain. This was no petty quarrel. This was a reckoning. Camilla arrived on time, her smile polished as ever, but it faltered when she saw William's rigid stance and the absolute storm in his eyes. Sinking into her chair, she offered the well-rehearsed warmth of a diplomat. "William, how good to see you! How is Catherine? I so appreciated her generosity with the tiara. It made such a splendid impression at the dinner." That single word, generosity, had struck William like flint against stone. He did not sit. His towering presence filled the entire room, making his intent unmistakable. "Camilla, we need to discuss your treatment of my wife. What happened with the tiara was completely unacceptable. It must never happen again." Her smile cooled instantly. "I beg your pardon?" she asked, her tone sharpening. "I borrowed a piece of jewelry for an important occasion." Catherine agreed readily. There was no issue. Catherine felt she had no choice. William shot back, his voice hardening. "You twisted her loyalty to this family into pressure. That tiara wasn't just jewelry. It was my grandmother's wedding gift to her, chosen specifically to symbolize her place here." Camilla's lips thinned. "As queen, I have obligations. Presentation is part of diplomacy. That tiara served the crown by honoring our guests." William's restraint was fraying. "As my wife, Catherine has rights you've repeatedly ignored. This wasn't an isolated moment. For months, you've exploited her good nature, pressuring her to surrender what is rightfully hers." Camilla rose, steel entering her voice. "That is an outrageous accusation. I have never bullied Catherine. Everything I've requested has been in service of the monarchy." But William could see Catherine's tears in his mind. The quiet suffering she'd tried so hard to hide. His control broke. You made my wife cry over a tiara that represented one of the most meaningful moments of her life, and you dared to invoke my grandmother's memory as leverage? That is manipulation, plain and simple." Camilla's cheeks flushed. "Your grandmother would have understood. These jewels exist to serve the crown, not sentiment." William's reply cut like glass. "That tiara was not crown property. It was my grandmother's personal gift to Catherine. She chose it to bind her into this family, not to see it paraded by anyone else." Their voices clashed, echoing against the walls. Camilla accused him of dramatics, of letting emotion cloud duty. William countered with a litany of her encroachments, each one a reminder of Catherine's forced compliance. Finally, Camilla played her trump card. "I am queen. My precedence is clear." William's voice dropped to ice. "You are my father's wife, but you will never have the right to mistreat mine." The confrontation shook Clarence House to its absolute core. Though the doors had been closed, staff outside had heard raised voices. They'd caught fragments of the clash. By afternoon, the palace's hidden grapevine was carrying competing versions of what happened. Some swore William had shouted about betrayal. Others whispered that Camilla had invoked her status as queen with unusual ferocity. The only certainty was that the household was divided, tension curling through every single corridor. King Charles received the report from his private secretary, a careful account that couldn't soften the truth. He now faced an impossible choice, mediating between his heir and his wife, two people equally certain of their righteousness. Neither inclined to yield. Catherine withdrew to her apartments, weighed down by guilt. She'd never wanted conflict, yet her quiet compliance had ignited one of the most bitter crises in the family's recent history. Lady Susan stayed close, rescheduling engagements and offering gentle counsel. Over tea, Catherine confessed she felt she'd divided the family, but Susan's reply was firm. "You are not responsible for other people's choices. William defended you, as any devoted husband should." Meanwhile, Camilla gathered her confidants, spinning the confrontation as an overreaction by a spoiled son unwilling to respect her authority. In her telling, she was the dutiful queen, unfairly maligned for simply doing her job. Beyond the palace walls, the press began to sense strain. Royal correspondents noticed subtle signs: the sudden absence of joint engagements, the brittle tone of official statements, the strained choreography of public appearances. Whispers of discord gained serious momentum. Princess Anne, pragmatic as ever, attempted to intervene. She urged William privately to tread carefully. Public clashes, she warned, would only strengthen Camilla's position and make him look reckless. But William's answer was clipped. "She bullied my wife into surrendering her wedding gift. Tell me, how should I have responded? With polite small talk?" Anne had no reply. She found equal resistance with Camilla, who dismissed William's fury as nothing but dramatics. Neither side moved an inch. Meanwhile, ever since the event, the tiara remained in Camilla's possession, its return quietly delayed under the excuse of photography and cataloging. Its absence loomed like a ghost over everything. Catherine couldn't bring herself to wear the matching sapphires. Every glimpse of their deep blue reminded her of what was missing and the storm it had unleashed. Inside the palace, even the smallest tasks had become political landmines. Scheduling receptions, drafting speeches, approving wardrobe choices. Every single move threatened to reveal allegiances. Departmental meetings turned into acts of survival, where loyalty was disguised as neutrality. The air itself seemed volatile, as if the entire household was waiting for a single spark to set everything ablaze. That spark came when King Charles summoned both William and Camilla to Buckingham Palace for what he called a family discussion. But everyone understood the truth, guys. The monarchy itself was about to be tested by the fallout of the tiara dispute. The meeting took place in the Regency room. Its gilded intimacy was chosen deliberately to soften the gravity of the subject. Charles positioned himself carefully between his son and his wife. His face was overwhelmed with fatigue, but steadied by resolve. He knew the crown's dignity depended on resolution, but he also understood the wounds in this quarrel were personal and deep. "We cannot continue with this level of discord," he began, his voice weighted with both fatherly weariness and sovereign command. "The institution we serve is larger than us all. Our disagreements must never undermine the duties we are bound to fulfill." William had come prepared. From his folder, he unfolded notes. Calm, precise, damning. He listed each incident of the past 18 months when Camilla had pressed Catherine for personal items under the guise of duty. His tone was measured, stripped of the anger that had marked their private confrontation. This repeated pattern has created an environment where Catherine feels powerless to protect her belongings, he said. The tiara incident was only the most visible example of behavior that cannot continue. Camilla's response was immediate, her voice smooth with practiced authority. She invoked her role as queen, the demands of presentation, the necessity of diplomacy. But before she could build her case, Charles raised a hand, cutting her off. His expression carried none of his usual gentleness. The sapphire tiara was a personal wedding gift from my mother to Catherine, Charles declared bluntly. It was never part of the crown collection. Treating it as communal property was inappropriate, regardless of context. The words landed like a thunderclap. For William, it was vindication. For Camilla, humiliation. Her cheeks flushed, but she said nothing as Charles pressed on. We will now establish a clear rule, he continued. Personal gifts, especially those from the sovereign, are private property. They will only be shared if the owner explicitly consents. William inclined his head but didn't stop there. An apology to Catherine is also necessary, he said firmly. She deserves acknowledgement for the distress she endured. Camilla stiffened, her pride battling the force of the king's expectant gaze. After a tense silence, she offered words that were as thin as glass. I regret that Catherine was distressed by my request. It was not my intention to cause upset, and I will respect the boundaries we have agreed upon. The apology was hollow, but Charles ended the matter right then and there. His focus was on restoring stability, not forcing genuine contrition. That afternoon, the tiara was quietly returned to Catherine's custody. She received it with gratitude shadowed by sorrow, knowing its meaning had been altered forever. Weeks later, when she wore it again at a private gathering, the sapphires sparkled as brilliantly as ever. Yet to her eyes, their light carried a memory of loss, of something sacred that had been bruised, though not destroyed. Publicly, the family facade snapped back into place. Joint engagements resumed. Statements dripped with careful formality, projecting an image of unity. But inside palace walls, nothing was the same. William's fierce defense of his wife had redrawn invisible lines of power. Staff whispered of the change with relief, knowing Catherine was no longer unprotected, her quiet suffering no longer invisible. Among insiders, the Japanese state dinner was remembered as the night that altered everything. The tiara sapphires still dazzled, but they carried with them the invisible weight of a crisis that hardened boundaries, shifted loyalties, and forced the monarchy to confront its own fragility. So guys, this scandal ripped away the glittering mask of royalty. It exposed raw emotion, fragile loyalties, and ruthless maneuvering behind those palace doors. What began as Camilla's bid to dazzle foreign dignitaries spiraled into a reckoning that left absolutely no relationship untouched. William's defense of Catherine showed the world, and more importantly, the palace, that no centuries-old protocol could silence a husband's instinct to protect his wife. In his fury, the image of a future king emerged, one who values principle over pageantry, loyalty over politics. For Catherine, the ordeal was a brutal lesson in the peril of marrying into royalty, where even a wedding gift can be weaponized. Yet her quiet dignity, combined with William's unwavering support, transformed her vulnerability into vindication. What are your thoughts on Queen Camilla's actions? Drop your opinions in the comments below. And if you found this story as wild as I did, smash that like button, share this video, and subscribe for more royal drama. And as always, peace out, Seshers!